San Pietro in the 5th Army sector was the key to the Liri Valley. We knew it, and the enemy knew it. We had to take it, even though the immediate cost would be high.
Welcome to this episode of WW2 Wayfinder, and today I am in the small Italian village of San Pietro Infine, or better known to many as just San Pietro. It was here between the 8th and the 17th of December 1943 that the men of the 36th Texas Division would fight a bitter battle for control of this village as part of their offensive against the Winter Line here in the Mignano Gap area. Here at San Pietro, the old San Pietro, not the new town, we get a really good idea of the geography of this area and why it was crucial to the Allies and Second Corps to punch through into the Liri Valley. Behind me is Monte Rotondo, and behind that is Mignano, and that's where this area gets the name of the Mignano Gap from. Highway 6, or Route 6, runs down in the valley below, and beyond that, this ridge line that we can see, this mountain line, that's Monte Lungo. And then in the distance, that's the Camino hill mass, named after the village of Camino itself. And Monte Camino is on the far side, and that stands at 963 meters above sea level. The peak that we can see there on the left, that's Monte La Defensa, and that sits at 960 meters, and that was taken by the 2nd Regiment of the 1st Special Service Force on the 3rd of December 1943 as part of Operation Raincoat. And then, as the Camino hill mass drops down, it goes down to hill 907, and that's Monte La Ramatana. And that position was taken later on by men of the 1st Special Service Force. And from this point here, as we look west, we can see that the next set of objectives for the Allies would be to punch through this hill mass, get past Monte Sammucro, which is in front of me, and then start to head towards the Gustav line at Monte Cassino. From there, process of getting past Cassino and then reaching Rome.
By early December, we had taken and were holding high ground to the northeast, east, and south of San Pietro, the Camino Maggiore hill mass being last to fall. An Italian brigade under Allied command had made a vain attempt to capture Mount Lungo, possession of which would have acted greatly to our benefit in the impending action. The Italians were all but annihilated. In view of their excessive losses, further operations against Mount Lungo's strategic heights were abandoned. And it was decided to make a direct frontal assault on enemy positions in and around San Pietro.
So the importance of San Pietro was that it formed part of the Winterline complex. 3 lines made up of the Bernhard line, the Gustav line and the Hitler line. And this here formed part of the Bernhard line, but to the Allies, just the Winter line. They were spaced a few miles apart and they ran coast to coast. And these were the big defensive structures that used the natural hillsides and German fortifications to create choke points to prevent the Allies' advance west, down through the Liri Valley and toward Rome. So the Germans moved into San Pietro in September 1943. They looked at the village. They knew that from a strategic point of view, with Monte Cassino to the west and Monte Lungo and Monte Rotondo, as well as the Camino hill mass, it was in an ideally suited position, elevated above Highway 6, and it had a commanding view out to the east, the direction in which the Allies would advance.
For San Pietro stands at the threshold of Liri Valley, and through Liri Valley, wide and level, runs the most highly prized length of road south of Rome.
So the Germans that moved in here were 2 battalion-sized elements of the 15th Panzergrenadier Regiment. They in turn formed part of the 29th Panzergrenadier Division, which were part of the 14th Panzer Corps, which formed part of the German 10th Army that was in this part of Italy.
4 enemy battalions were dug into a line of connecting trenches and mutually supporting pillboxes in depth that extended from the base of Mount Lungo, northeast across the valley floor to the base of Mount Cassino. Another battalion was organized to defend the high ground northwest of San Pietro. Areas before these positions were heavily mined and held a confusion of barbed wire and booby traps.
So we can see as we walk through San Pietro here, the thickness of these ancient stone walls and how this would become a true defender's paradise, with great fields of fire looking out to the east. Also as well with Monte Cassino and Monte Lungo with German artillery pieces on it. This whole area was covered by the Germans.
December 8th, at 0620 hours, the 1st Battalion of the 143rd Infantry Regiment to attack the summit of 1205, having moved up the mountain under cover of darkness, and upon achieving its objective to attack along the ridge to a point northwest of San Pietro. The 3rd Ranger Battalion likewise to attack 950, another feature of the Mount Cassino hill mass. The 2nd Battalion of the 143rd to attack over the terraced olive orchards northeast of San Pietro. The 3rd Battalion acting in support to follow the 2nd at 400 yards.
So in front of me stands Monte Cassino, and at its peak it's 1,205 meters tall, and it was here that the Germans sighted their artillery on some of the reverse slopes and with observers higher up, so they were able to command the artillery fire down onto the Mignano Gap and to the Allies of 2nd Corps.
The 1st Battalion began the long, rugged climb up Mount Cassino. As night fell, our artillery opened up, and throughout the night hours, intense fire was laid down on the enemy's main line of resistance. It had rained most of the night, and it was raining at each hour when the 2nd and 3rd Battalions crossed the line of departure. Some 200 yards forward, they encountered mines and automatic fire from pillboxes. Artillery were deadly accurate by reason of excellent enemy observation from Mount Lungo, overlooking our advance, which continued another 200 to 400 yards. 3rd Battalion was committed, but the advance never got more than 600 yards past the line of departure. Our initial assault on San Pietro had been repulsed with heavy casualties. The attack on Hill 1205, however, was a brilliant success. Leading elements of the 1st Battalion had gained the summit of the objective before a strongly entrenched enemy knew that an assault was in progress. To the right of 1205, the 3rd Ranger Battalion had also captured its objective, but only after successive attacks and costly casualties. For on 950, the enemy was not taken unaware. Counterattacks were to be expected on both 1205 and 950. They were not long developing. The first was launched during the early daylight hours, and even as it was beaten off, another took form. Day and night they followed in unremitting violence. But German prisoners captured on 1205 and 950 said they had been ordered to retake those positions at all cost. In addition to defending Hill 1205, the 1st Battalion, obedient to the field order, undertook the reduction of enemy defenses which were organized along the ridge running west. On the 12th of December, the 1st Battalion was reinforced by the 504th Parachute Battalion, which took over and maintained the defenses of 1205 and 950, thereby enabling the 1st Battalion to throw its entire remaining strength into the assault along the ridge. But the first strength had dwindled and shrunk in the 5 days past, and there was now a question as to whether its existing numbers were sufficient to prevail. Reports during the night of the 14th of December stated that the enemy was offering bitter resistance and that the issue was in grave doubt. Meanwhile, on the olive terraces below, the 2nd and 3rd Battalions had twice again attempted to reach their objective. Both times they had come up against a wall of automatic weapon, mortar, and artillery fire. Volunteer patrols made desperate attempts to reach enemy positions and reduce strong points. Not a single member of any such patrol ever came back alive. Our attacking forces were furnished excellent aerial cover by Allied fighter patrols. But now and then, enemy planes were able to slip through and to bomb and strafe our positions, which to all purposes had remained unchanged since the first day. To break the deadlock, orders were given for a coordinated divisional attack. The 2nd and 3rd Battalions of the 143rd to proceed in the execution of the original orders. Acting in conjunction, Company A of the 753rd Tank Battalion to attack San Pietro from the east over the high road. One battalion of the 141st to attack over the flat valley floor. After nightfall on D-Day, the 142nd Infantry Regiment to attack Mount Lungo. The earlier decision not to attack those strategic heights having been reversed in view of the present critical situation. In preparation for the attack, all 5th Army artillery within range, including tanks and all tracks, was directed against San Pietro and the surrounding area.
After a week of intense attacks and counterattacks, the 143rd Infantry of Major General Fred Walker's US 36th Division, the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and the 504th Parachute Regimental Combat Team had gained control of the heights of Monte Cassino. The 36th Division then planned a further effort for the 15th of December. The 143rd Infantry, assisted by the 504th Parachute Regimental Combat Team, was to push to the west along the shoulders of Monte Cassino and take San Vittore del Lazio, while to the south of Route 6, the 142nd Infantry, supported by the Italian 1st Motorised Group, was to take Monte Lungo. So the main attack would be launched by the 2nd Battalion of the 141st Infantry Regiment of the 36th Infantry Division. The attack went in at midday on the 15th of December 1943, and in support they had armour from A Company of the 753rd Tank Battalion, which comprised of 16 Shermans and some tank destroyers.
Orders were for them to enter the town and to locate and destroy the heavy weapons there, which were leveled against our attacking foot soldiers. The high road into San Pietro is a narrow mountain road, and from the beginning of its winding descent in the Liri Valley, it was under direct enemy observation. "16 tanks started down that road. 3 reached the outskirts of the town. Of these, 2 were destroyed, and 1 was missing. 5 tanks were immobilized behind enemy lines, their crews having to abandon them. 5 tanks hit enemy mines within our lines and were thereupon destroyed by enemy gunfire. 4 tanks returned to the bivouac area.
As the attack went in, the armour from the 753rd Tank Battalion suffered heavy losses. Of the 16 tanks, 12 of them were hit by mines and anti-tank fire, and they weren't able to withdraw from the positions until after dark, when only 4 made it back to Allied lines.
After dark, 2 companies, 1 from the 2nd Battalion and 1 from the 3rd, finally succeeded in penetrating enemy positions before San Pietro. But receiving both frontal and flanking fire, they were forced to retire. Company E having been reduced in strength to a handful of riflemen, and Company L faring little better.
One other important aspect about the battle here at San Pietro were the actions that were going on at Monte Rotondo and Monte Lungo. 3rd Battalion of the 141st Infantry Regiment were attacking Monte Lungo, and the whole of the 142nd Infantry Regiment were attacking Monte Rotondo. It was also during these engagements where the Americans were trying to throw out the 3rd Battalion of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Regiment that was located in those hills, the sister battalion to the 2nd Battalion that was here in San Pietro, where the Italians first joined the Americans as allies fighting against the Germans following the switch earlier in the summer of 1943, when Mussolini was arrested and Marshal Badoglio was put in charge of the Italian forces and they switched side to the Allies.
On Mount Lungo, however, despite bitter resistance, battalions of the 142nd in successive waves kept pushing upwards until, in the early daylight hours of the 16th of December, its foot soldiers had gained the summit and were wiping up what remained of a stubborn enemy. And that height proved to be a key position in the enemy plan of defense, for even as Mount Lungo fell, the enemy throughout the San Pietro area made preparations to withdraw. Almost invariably, the enemy will counterattack to cover a withdrawal. The first violent thrust was delivered within a few hours. And thereafter, counterattacks came in waves, the roar of the last mingling with the rush and fury of the next to bring. Many companies lost all their officers. Enlisted men came forward as inspirational leaders to rally their battered companies and resist yet one more onslaught. Our own artillery was brought to fall within 100 yards of our front-line elements. After 5 hours, during which the earth never ceased to tremble, counterattacks ended, indicating that the withdrawal of the enemy's main body had commenced.
So walking into these devastated, bombed out buildings, you get a real sense of the destruction that was wrought here on the village of San Pietro. And even today, there's still traces of the human life that was here. Looking up on the top of the building, you can see there's still traces of paint that were left from when this building was occupied and was part of the community, whether it was someone's home or whether it was a place of business or part of the town community, whatever it was here, there are still traces of life even amongst all of the devastation that took place here, and that's quite incredible to see. This is the church here at San Pietro now. They've done some renovation work to it post-war, really to shore up the building and just to bring some of it back to life. But it is a stark reminder of the brutality of what happened here in this small, tiny Italian village. We'll go inside and take a look. And the people prayed to their patron saint to intercede with God in behalf of those who came, delivered them, and passed on to the north with the passing battle. So like in any conflict, it happens to be that the civilians are those who suffer some of the hardest deprivations and face the real brutality of war. The villagers here at San Pietro, when the Germans arrived in September 1943, those who were pressed into service would help carry ammunition and prepare the defensive positions for the Germans. But some villagers did escape to nearby caves. However, for the time that they were there, they had very little food and their conditions soon reduced into absolute horror. So many of the villagers started to die in the caves as a result of the malnutrition and the horrific conditions that they were living in. And it's one of the reasons that now San Pietro Infine remains here today as a living reminder as to what those villagers here experienced, as well as tens of thousands of other villagers and civilians throughout the Italian campaign from 1943 to 1945.
Children are able to forget quickly. Yesterday they wept. Today there are smiles and even laughter. Tomorrow it will be as though the bad things had never happened.
As part of my research for coming here to San Pietro, I wanted to look for original photos and then try and match up the now locations. As you've seen probably in other videos, I'm always looking for then and now locations. It's part of my channel and it's part of the thing that I really enjoy as an amateur historian myself. However, sadly, you've probably seen now from San Pietro that the devastation here was such that trying to match up locations from wartime photos to how overgrown the village is now is very difficult, and sadly I don't have the time to spend here to really go through and look at every single street, every single building and take the time that's required. But there are two photos of GIs in and around San Pietro here from the main road that we can clearly locate, and we'll take a look at those now. So that's the first image. They're men, most likely T-patchers from the 36th Infantry Division, walking along this wall here, and we can clearly see that here, as well as the entrance, or that archway there, which still remains. Now obviously, because of the fighting that took place here and the devastation, a lot of this has been rebuilt and refinished. It retains its original shape, but there are some differences in the structure. But we can really see from the image, especially if we look up here, where we can see St. Michael's Church up there on the horizon with the dominating feature of Monte Cassino behind it, you can see the devastation that took place here. So the second image that we know that was taken here in San Pietro Infine that I can find easily today was taken roughly in this location. That's the image in question. We can see more GIs, one of whom's a medic, and we can see this wall here, which is this wall now that has the memorial name on the side of it. And then this secondary wall here that goes up, and there's a distinctive ramped section, which is just up there on that section of the wall. And this is another great image that really brings home just how badly San Pietro was hit during the fighting here in December 1943. So today, San Pietro Infine is now a lasting memorial to the events that happened here in December 1943. There's a visitor centre, and there's also this memorial to the men of the 36th Infantry Division who took the village, and to the villagers themselves who lost their lives here during the conflict. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of World War II Wayfinder, looking at the events here at San Pietro Infine during December 1943. If you have, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Okay, I'll see you all in the next one.
The lives lost were precious lives to their country, to their loved ones, and to the men themselves. For the living of the 143rd Infantry Regiment, more than 100 decorations for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. Many among these you see alive here have since joined the ranks of their brothers in arms who fell at San Pietro. For ahead lay San Vittore and the Rapido River and Cassino, and beyond Cassino more rivers and more mountains and more towns, more San Pietros, greater or lesser, 1,000 more.